The man on his knees in front of Zara was not a small man. He ran 3 counties. He had survived 4 assassination attempts. His name alone had ended careers, marriages, and lives. And right now, with blood on his collar and fear carved into every line of his face, he was begging her. Not Mateo Vega, the most feared cartel boss in all of northern Mexico. Her. Zara Ellison Vega. The quiet wife. The woman who cooked arroz con leche on Sunday mornings and never raised her voice above a whisper. The woman Mateo's men had privately called La Sombra, the shadow, because she seemed to exist in the background of every room, invisible, harmless, forgettable. She crouched down until she was eye level with the man trembling before her. "Tell me everything," she said softly. "And maybe, I let you leave with both hands." Mateo Vega stood 5 feet behind her, jaw locked, chest tight, watching a version of his wife he had never seen and could not explain. 2 years of marriage. 2 years of assumptions. 2 years of being completely, catastrophically wrong. What happened next was unbelievable. Before this story goes any further, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love knowing who's in this community. And hit subscribe right now, because what this woman does next. Nobody sees it coming. The wedding had cost $4 million and taken exactly 11 minutes to mean nothing. Zara remembered standing at the altar inside the Vega Estate's private chapel, white dress pressed perfectly against her body, eyes lowered in what every guest interpreted as nervous modesty. She had been counting exits. 3 doors. 2 windows. 1 skylight that would require a 12-foot drop but was absolutely viable if necessary. Old habits. Mateo Vega had barely looked at her during the ceremony. He had stood with the posture of a man fulfilling a contractual obligation, which was exactly what he was doing. The marriage had been arranged through a complex negotiation between the Vega cartel and an American business consortium with deep southern roots, the kind of arrangement where daughters were currency and silence was the agreed exchange rate. Zara's uncle, Bernard Ellison, had presented the arrangement with the confidence of a man who had no idea what his niece was actually capable of. "She's refined. Educated. She won't cause problems." He had been right about one thing. She was educated. Just not the way he meant. Mateo had signed the agreement the same afternoon he signed 3 other business documents. That told Zara everything she needed to know about where she stood in his world. Fine. She had her own reasons for being here. The reception was a masterclass in performance. Zara smiled graciously, accepted compliments about her dress with quiet warmth, and spent the entire evening cataloging every face in the room. By the time the last guest left, she had mentally profiled 42 people, identified 2 who were almost certainly working for rival organizations, 1 who was skimming money from Mateo's own accounts, and Rodrigo Salinas, the chief operations commander who smiled too wide and blinked too slowly. That one, she thought. That one is the most dangerous person in this building. She filed it away. Said nothing. She was here for peace. She had promised herself. Mateo walked past her on the way to his office without a word. Perfect, Zara thought. Invisible is exactly what I need to be. But some women are too observant for their own peace of mind. And what Zara would notice over the coming weeks would make peace completely impossible. 2 months into the marriage, Mateo Vega had spoken to his wife a total of perhaps 40 sentences. Most of them were functional. "I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Tell the kitchen I want coffee at 6. Occasionally, when his men were present, he would acknowledge her with a slight nod that communicated nothing except that he was aware she existed. His men had drawn their own conclusions. "She's perfect for him," Rodrigo said one evening, swirling his glass in the study while Mateo reviewed a shipment manifest. Quiet. Grateful. Stays in her lane. He smiled. American women can be complicated. But this one understands her position. Mateo said nothing. He had found Zara's compliance useful rather than noteworthy. She ran the household with startling efficiency, handled his social calendar with precision that impressed even Camila, and never once entered his office uninvited or asked questions about his business. She was exactly what he needed. A beautiful, composed presence who gave his empire the image of stability without demanding anything from him personally. What he didn't know was what happened every morning between 4:15 and 5:30 a.m. Before the household woke, Zara rose in complete silence, dressed in darkness, and went to the far end of the estate's eastern garden, the one spot the security cameras didn't cover, a gap she had identified on her third day. There she ran drills. Not yoga. Not light stretching. Drills. Movement sequences her mother had built into her muscle memory over 15 years of training. Pattern recognition exercises. Mental mapping of the estate's full layout, every corridor, every guard rotation, every timing gap. She ran it like a machine. By 5:25, she was back in bed, breathing measured, before Mateo's 5:30 alarm. She wasn't planning anything. She was just staying ready. Because Gloria Ellison had raised her daughter with one unbreakable rule: a prepared woman is never a victim. And then, on a Tuesday morning in November, Zara heard something she wasn't supposed to hear. She had been in the kitchen, perfectly still, preparing Mateo's espresso, when Rodrigo arrived early for a meeting. He didn't know she was on the other side of the half-open door. His phone call lasted 43 seconds. 43 seconds was more than enough. She heard a name. She heard a date. She heard a location. And her blood went absolutely cold. Because the name she heard was El Cobra, the one cartel rival even Mateo's most fearless men refused to discuss above a whisper. Rodrigo was talking to El Cobra like they were old friends. Zara set the espresso cup down without making a sound. Her face showed nothing. Her hands were perfectly steady. But her mind had already started working through every possible scenario, and not one of them ended well for Mateo Vega. Unless she did something about it. What she discovered when she dug deeper would turn her entire world upside down. That night, Zara waited. She waited until Mateo's breathing deepened into the heavy rhythm of exhausted sleep. She waited until the hallway guard completed his 2 a.m. rotation and settled back into position. She waited, still as stone, until every variable aligned. Then she moved. Picking the lock on Mateo's private office took her 11 seconds. She had practiced the mechanism mentally for 3 weeks from a single stolen glance at the lock's make and model. Inside, she worked by the pale glow of her burner phone, the one from the locked box at the back of her closet, the one she had sworn she would never need. The files were extensive and well organized. Mateo was meticulous. She moved through them with surgical efficiency, not disturbing a single paper's angle. And then she found the red folder. Her hands slowed. Inside was a complete operational blueprint, a major expansion deal that would extend Vega territory through 3 American states using a network of legitimate businesses as cover. The kind of move that would make Mateo the most powerful cartel figure in the Western Hemisphere. The meeting to finalize the deal was scheduled for Friday. 3 days away. A private estate in Guadalajara. But there was something else tucked behind the operational file. Something that hadn't come from Mateo's records. It was a tactical approach map of the Guadalajara estate. Marked entry points. Guard positions. Timing windows. Someone had been planning a hit on that meeting. And the handwriting on the margin notes, she had seen that handwriting before. On a birthday card pinned to the staff board in the kitchen. Rodrigo. Zara stood motionless for a long moment in the dark office, processing the full weight of what she was holding. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was evidence. Rodrigo wasn't just talking to El Cobra. He was feeding him the location, the layout, and the timing of Mateo's most critical meeting of the decade. Mateo was walking into a massacre. She replaced every file exactly as she'd found it. Relocked the office. Return to bed. Lay in the darkness beside her husband, staring at the ceiling. Tell him and explain how you know. Or say nothing and watch him die. She had promised herself she was done with this world. She had promised her mother. She had promised herself. The ceiling offered no answers. But by the time the sun rose, Zara had made her choice. And it would change everything, for both of them. If you are locked in on this story right now, hit that like button and subscribe. Zara has made her decision, and what happens next is going to leave your jaw on the floor. Stay with us. Breakfast was eggs, fresh tortillas, and black coffee. Zara set the plate in front of Mateo with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything. He was already on his phone, scrolling through messages with the intense focus of a man whose morning was already running at full capacity. She sat across from him. She never sat across from him at breakfast. He looked up, mildly surprised. The trip to Guadalajara Friday, she said carefully. Is the security detail confirmed? Mateo set his phone down slowly. The way someone sets something down when they want to use both hands to manage their patience. Why are you asking about Guadalajara? Camila mentioned the travel arrangements. Not exactly a lie. Camila had mentioned the car hire in passing. Something felt off this week. The energy in the house. I thought you should double-check your team. Mateo looked at her the way he might look at a decorative painting that had spontaneously started offering opinions on warfare. Zara. His voice was steady and final. I have been running operations since before you graduated university. My security arrangements are not something you need to concern yourself with. I know. You just what? Not angry. Worse, dismissive. The tone of someone explaining gravity to a child. You have a feeling. You sense something. The silence stretched between them. Focus on what you're good at, he said, picking his phone back up. I'll handle what I'm good at. He left the house 20 minutes later without looking back. Zara stood at the kitchen window watching the convoy pull out of the gate, Rodrigo riding in the second vehicle, relaxed and unhurried, the picture of loyalty. He doesn't know I exist, she thought. None of them do. And for the first time in 2 years, she decided that was going to be an advantage rather than an insult. She went to her closet. Pushed the dresses aside. Opened the locked box. She stared at the contents for a long moment. Forgive me, Mama. She started getting ready. But what she was preparing for was far more dangerous than she could have anticipated. The Guadalajara estate sat at the end of a private road behind 2 security checkpoints and 3 acres of manicured grounds. Zara had arrived 6 hours before Mateo's convoy. She hadn't driven. She had taken a bus to a town 40 minutes outside the city, changed clothes in a service station bathroom, and covered the last distance in a vehicle she had sourced through a contact she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. A woman who asked no questions because she had been trained in the same program as Gloria Ellison. The estate's perimeter had 4 gaps in its patrol timing. She found all of them inside 20 minutes. By the time the Vega convoy rolled through the front gate at 9 p.m., Zara had been inside the building for 2 hours. She knew every room. Every guard position. Every exit angle. She was on the second floor landing behind a false wall panel, the kind built into old estate architecture for staff passage, when the meeting began below. 12 men. 3 factions. Mateo at the head of the table, commanding the room with the effortless authority that had built his empire. Rodrigo at his right hand, the perfect image of a trusted second. Zara watched Rodrigo check his watch 4 times in the first 20 minutes. He's timing something. She scanned the windows. The grounds. The shadows beyond the garden lights. There. Movement in the cypress trees on the eastern side. A shape that didn't belong. Then another. And another. She counted quietly, lips barely moving. 10. At minimum. Professional spacing. Coordinated angles. These weren't opportunists. This was a kill team. And they were already inside the outer perimeter. She had maybe 8 minutes before they moved to breach positions. 8 minutes to figure out how to disrupt a coordinated tactical assault on a 12-man meeting without getting herself or her husband killed. Her mother's voice was calm in her memory. You don't need to win the whole fight. You just need to change one thing. Change one thing and the whole plan collapses. Zara's eyes moved slowly across the room below, across the exits, across Rodrigo's barely concealed tension. She found the one thing. And she started moving. What she did in the next 4 minutes, nobody in that room would ever forget it. She hit the power junction first. The estate's external lighting, the garden floods, the driveway illumination, the perimeter spots, all ran through a secondary panel in the east utility corridor. Zara had found it during her reconnaissance. Took her 3 seconds to cut the feeds. The grounds went dark. Below, she heard voices sharpen in confusion. Chairs scraping. The meeting fracturing. Good. Chaos buys time. She was already moving toward the east corridor when the first breach charge detonated, one of the side doors blowing inward with a concussive crack that shook the walls. Then a second. Automatic weapon fire erupted in short controlled bursts. El Cobra's team was good. Disciplined. They moved through the dark in formation, communicating in hand signals, clearly trained for exactly this scenario. What they were not trained for was her. She came off the stairwell into the path of the lead operative and dropped him before he registered she was there. Took his radio. Listened to the channel traffic for 4 seconds, enough to understand the assault pattern and the rally point. Rodrigo. They were supposed to get confirmation from Rodrigo before executing the final sweep. She keyed the radio. Pressed it low against her lips. Hold positions. Rodrigo's voice was distinct. She had studied it for weeks. She didn't replicate it, she didn't need to. Just enough static heavy noise to create doubt. 3 seconds of silence on the channel. It was enough. The assault team's timing fractured. 2 of them broke pattern to wait for confirmation. That gap, those 3 seconds, was all Mateo's men needed to regroup and fight back. Downstairs, gunfire intensified. Zara was already moving toward the main hall. She came through the door in time to see 2 of El Cobra's men closing on Mateo from behind while he engaged 2 others head-on, the calculation of a man who had never needed to worry about what was behind him. She moved between them and the gap before they reached him. It was the first time Mateo Vega saw his wife in full motion. He turned at the sound of the impact. Watched her disarm the first man with a movement so efficient it seemed almost gentle. Watched her redirect the second into the wall with a controlled force that left him crumpled and still. She straightened. Turned to face her husband. Their eyes met across the chaos of the room. Neither of them spoke. Mateo's face, the face that had never, in anyone's memory, shown genuine shock, showed shock. "Who are you?" he said. And that was when Rodrigo made his move. What he did next changed everything, and Zara had to make the most dangerous choice of her life. Rodrigo moved fast. Faster than someone who had just watched his carefully orchestrated plan fall apart should have moved, which told Zara everything. He hadn't panicked. He had pivoted. He had a secondary plan. He went for Mateo. Not with a weapon. With words, and a detonator. Nobody move. His voice cut through the dying gunfire with crisp command authority. He held a small device at shoulder height, thumb resting on the trigger. "This estate has charges in the foundation. You shoot me, we all go down together." The room froze. Mateo's men looked between their boss and the man who had stood at his right hand for 9 years. The cognitive dissonance of betrayal, visible on every face. Mateo himself went very still. The kind of stillness that in another context might look like calm. Zara knew it wasn't calm. She had seen that stillness in her mother before operations where the margin for error was zero. Rodrigo. Mateo's voice was even. Controlled. A blade with no handle. 9 years. 9 years of building your empire while you took all the credit. Rodrigo's smile was the most honest expression Zara had ever seen on his face. El Cobra offered me a better arrangement. Territory. Autonomy. Respect. His eyes moved briefly to Zara, dismissive, confused. Your little housewife played a very nice trick tonight. Impressive. But this ends the same way regardless. He moved the detonator slightly. Signal enough. Zara had been running the geometry since the moment he raised it. Distance, 14 feet. His thumb position, cocked but not depressed, he wanted to walk out alive. The secondary door behind him, propped open, which meant he had a pre-planned exit route that his extraction team was staged against. She needed him away from that door. She needed his eyes off her for exactly 1 second. She looked at Mateo. Just a look. Brief and specific, the look her mother used to give her when the plan was already in motion and all Zara had to do was trust it. Mateo caught it. He didn't know what it meant. But something in him responded, some instinct honed by years of surviving in rooms where the wrong move ended everything. He took a single step forward, drawing Rodrigo's full attention. 1 second. Zara moved. She didn't go for the detonator. She went for his wrist, controlling the thumb, rotating the joint outward with a precise orthopedic lock that made depressing any trigger mechanically impossible regardless of intent. Rodrigo gasped. The device dropped. Mateo Vega, who had been motionless against the east wall, crossed the room in 2 strides and had Rodrigo on the ground before the sound of his shout finished echoing. Silence collapsed over the room. Every eye moved to Zara. She stood in the center of the floor, breathing evenly, and waited. Mateo walked toward her slowly. His expression was something she had no prior reference for. She had catalogued his face across 2 years of living in his house and had never seen this particular combination before. He stopped 3 feet away. Talk, he said. Now. Everything. And for the first time in 2 years, Zara Ellison Vega told the truth. What she revealed made Mateo question everything he thought he knew about the woman he married. They sat in the estate's undamaged west wing. Guards posted. Rodrigo secured. The rest of the men managing the aftermath in controlled silence. Just the 2 of them across a narrow table. Mateo hadn't looked away from her since she started speaking. She told him everything. Not because she had to. Because she was tired. Tired of carrying the weight of a double life she had never wanted to rebuild. She told him about Gloria Ellison. About growing up in a household where dinner conversations included extraction routes and threat assessment. About the skills built into her body before she had fully understood what they were for. She told him about Lagos. About the missions she had shadowed as a teenager, convinced she was indestructible the way only teenagers can be. She told him about the Congo. About the ambush that broke everything. About sitting in a hospital holding her mother's damaged hands and promising, genuinely promising herself, that she was finished with all of it. I married into this arrangement because I thought a cartel boss who didn't care about me was the safest possible life, she said. Her voice was level but her hands, folded on the table, were tight. I thought if you ignored me enough, I could just disappear into the background and never have to be that person again. Mateo was quiet for a long moment. And Rodrigo, he asked. How long? 3 weeks of suspicion. 3 days of certainty. She met his eyes. I tried to warn you at breakfast. The memory crossed his face, the quiet question about Guadalajara, the dismissal. Something shifted in his jaw. I thought you were. Being a housewife who didn't understand your world. There was no bitterness in it. Just fact. I know. Silence. The ambush disruption, he said. The radio interference. The lighting. That was all you. Your men did the actual fighting. I just changed one variable. He studied her for so long she could hear her own heartbeat. You could have let me die, he said finally. Not as an accusation. Almost as a question. Yes. Why didn't you? Zara looked at the man across from her, the man who had treated her as furniture for 2 years, who had never once asked her a real question until tonight. Because I'm not built that way, she said simply. Regardless of what you thought of me. Mateo leaned back. Ran one hand across his jaw. Looked at the ceiling. I owe you my life, he said quietly. Yes, she agreed. You do. But what came next wasn't an apology. It was something neither of them had expected to find in that room tonight, and it was far more dangerous than anything El Cobra could have sent. 3 days after Guadalajara, El Cobra requested a meeting. Not with Mateo Vega. With his wife. The message came through a back channel, a contact El Cobra had clearly maintained for exactly this kind of unconventional situation. The message was precise and contained zero negotiating language. I want to speak with the woman who broke Rodrigo Salinas's operation in 45 minutes with no support. I want to speak with her directly. Name the location. Mateo read it twice. Then he walked to the kitchen, where Zara was making coffee, and placed the printed message on the counter beside her cup. She read it. Set it down. He's not asking for a truce with you, she said. He's trying to determine if I'm a weapon you control or a variable he needs to account for independently. Which are you? Zara turned to face him fully. This was the most they had spoken consecutively in 2 years of marriage, and she was still adjusting to the experience of being looked at, actually looked at, by this man. I'm not a weapon, she said. I'm a woman who made choices. There's a difference. Mateo nodded slowly. He'll come harder if we don't respond, she said. He's not afraid of you the way he used to be. Rodrigo was feeding him assessments for months. He thinks he knows your operation's weak points. And he hasn't started factoring me in yet. Which means right now, I'm the most valuable thing you have. She paused. Let me respond. Mateo Vega, man who trusted no one, who had built an empire on the principle that everyone was ultimately a liability, was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, what do you need? The meeting with El Cobra happened 4 days later, in a neutral location in Monterrey that Zara chose herself. She walked in alone. She walked out 20 minutes later. El Cobra's organization sent formal notice of territorial non-aggression the following morning. No conditions. No timeline. No negotiation follow-up requested. Mateo's men, who had been waiting in vehicles outside the building, watched her emerge and could not make sense of what they were seeing. Dante Vega looked at his brother in the passenger seat. Who is she? He asked quietly. Mateo watched his wife cross the street toward them, composed, unhurried, exactly the same woman who had been invisible in his house for 2 years. My wife, he said. Like it was a new word. Like he was saying it for the first time. That evening, for the first time in their marriage, Mateo sat at the dinner table with no phone in his hand. He looked at Zara across the table, really looked, the way he had failed to for 2 full years. Tell me something real, he said. About yourself. Something I don't know. She raised an eyebrow slightly. The ghost of a smile. That list is very long, she said. I have time, he said. And something shifted between them. Not dramatically. Not with declarations or apologies that could erase 2 years of dismissal in a single conversation. But something real. Something that had been impossible when she was invisible and he was unaware. She was seen now. Completely. And he was, for the first time, worthy of seeing her. Rodrigo Salinas was handed over to a federal authority Mateo maintained an arrangement with, the kind of arrangement that ensured Rodrigo would never resurface. El Cobra's non-aggression held, not because he feared Mateo's firepower, but because he had sat across a table from Zara Vega for 20 minutes and understood, with the clarity of a man who had survived by reading people correctly, that she was the most dangerous individual he had ever encountered in a negotiation room. Not because she threatened him. Because she didn't need to. Gloria Ellison flew in from Atlanta 2 weeks later. She sat in the Vega Estates garden, drank good coffee, and watched her daughter move through the grounds with the ease of someone who had finally stopped pretending. "You broke your promise," Gloria said. "I know," Zara said. Gloria smiled. "Good. It was a terrible promise." Mateo built Zara a private office in the East Wing, across from his. He began including her in strategic conversations. Not because she demanded it. Because he had finally understood what he had been wasting. She never became what his world originally tried to make her. She wasn't muscle. She wasn't a weapon. She was something the cartel world had never encountered before, a woman who had been fully capable of dismantling every room she walked into, and had chosen, again and again, to keep the peace instead. Until the day keeping the peace meant saving the man who hadn't earned it yet. He was earning it now. One honest conversation at a time. Zara never needed anyone to see her. She had survived too long on invisibility for validation to matter. But sometimes, the right person seeing you for who you truly are changes the entire story. If this hit you the way it was meant to, subscribe to this channel right now. We build stories like this one, stories where the women are always 3 moves ahead, and the ending always earns its emotion. Drop a comment below, did you see Rodrigo's betrayal coming? And what moment hit you hardest, Zara in that office at 2 a.m., or the look on Mateo's face when he finally said "my wife" like it meant something? Like this video if Zara deserved better from the start, and if you believe she got exactly what she earned in the end. We'll see you in the next story. Stay sharp.